So now let's talk about the strategies. So, this you've heard about a lot, diversification. We need to diversify our portfolio because that gives us more opportunities to grow. It reduces our exposure to market turbulence. This is one of the core drivers of how we move forward. So how do we do this? Well, clearly increasing our customer base reduces the turbulence you feel from project phasing. If you have more customers, then your lines become smoother. And we can do this by entering new markets. Clearly, we can also do it by expanding our footprint in our current markets, and that is something we're doing, it goes without saying. But by entering new markets, then you reduce your dependence on a smaller number of markets. We can also look to add more products per workflow. This gives you more levers to pull. It makes sense from a commercial perspective. It makes it easier for sales. It allows us to sell at a workflow level. It allows us to defend our business because it's harder to substitute 4 products than it is to substitute 1. And it gives us a greater share of wallet per workflow. Finally, we have existing business. So we do need to make sure that we look after that. So we need to make sure that we're protecting and we're reinforcing our current market position where we currently have significant market share. Okay. So now we'll start looking at the strategy. We have an umbrella strategy that sits over everything, and Michael's alluded to this, and Paul will talk about it later as well. First of all, we want to become customer-centric. It's very easy to sell an enzyme in a tube. But what we want to do is become a solution provider for our customers. We want to be the product that underpins their business needs, that adds value to them as a business. Okay. And we do this by not being an enzyme manufacturer, by being a solutions provider. But this builds more value into the product. It makes it easier to defend. It increases the proximity with our customers, allows us to understand the market and see opportunities earlier and to see risks earlier. Alongside this, we need to widen our base, diversification. And this runs as a thread through all of the strategies. How can we enter new markets? And when we enter those markets, how can we add multiple products into that market? The simple way to say it is existing products into new markets, new products into existing markets, and where we can and we see the opportunity, new products into new markets. This is underpinned by 4 strategic pillars. We have 3 pillars around product, and we have 1 around our channel strategy, how we go to market. I'm not going to talk about the channel strategy because that's going to be covered in Paul's presentation. I'm going to talk about the 3 product pillars. Molecular tools. Now I'm going to start off with a workflow. There will be a test on this. No. So really what I want to do here is, rather than talking about the complexity of the workflow, is to show our approach to it. Now, this is a metagenomics, next-generation sequencing workflow. In the past, we may have had 1 product in a workflow. Now what we're doing is we're looking at a workflow and seeing where is there a problem, where is there a challenge, where can we add value? Where do we have current product? Where do we have product in our pipeline that is going to allow us to add value to a customer and add value to this workflow for us to take a greater share of wallet? So all the blue boxes you see are areas where we are currently looking at or have ongoing projects or products which we understand can be repositioned but need application data. These are all ongoing. Where we have a green tick, it shows where we currently have a product. So we currently have a great product in this workflow for host DNA clearance. And this was touched before. Our SAN products have worked exceptionally well in this area, and we're very lucky that they've been baked into a lot of the early protocols that are coming through. The groundbreaking work that's happening today is working with our enzymes, which is fantastic. But we see lots of other opportunities in this workflow to really build a wider footprint. So what's the strategy for molecular tools? Very simply, it's enter the NGS market using our existing portfolio and with some key identified products that answer customer need, whilst maintaining our PCR business and protecting that. If we look at the initiatives that follow underneath this, the first one is develop an NGS portfolio, which is something we're in the process of doing today. and identify new opportunities. And there are new opportunities. There are things as new technologies in next-generation sequencing build out, like RNA sequencing, metagenomics, there are opportunities to add new enzymes in and solve customer problems. The second major pillar is metagenomics. Metagenomics has got a life of its own right now. We've had groundbreaking papers come out over the last 2 years. It is beginning a relatively steep adoption curve. Our aim is to drive awareness of this as a technique, to work with the authors and the key opinion leaders who are driving this technique to really amplify the message into market. And we've already done that this year. We had a very successful webinar at the beginning of the year. And we have a customer who is a key opinion leader in this space to talk to you later. The more we drive this, as of today, the more this pulls our enzymes through. And we're working on solutions in this space to make it easier for customers to work with us. The flip side is we have significant Cod UNG business. We need to reinforce that in the market and make sure it's defendable. Cod UNG will grow along with the market reproducibly, and we want that stable backdrop. So we will, primarily through marketing, reinforce the position there, reinforce that it's a risk prevention system, and who better to reduce that risk than the inventors of the product. The final element of this is we have some other products in this space which don't add so much value, and we're going to defocus on those. As of today, we're going to focus on the core drivers which we see adding value to customers. Viral vectors. So again, we have a viral vector workflow. The first and second boxes are basically the same step. This is a host DNA clearance step. The final step of quality control is an area where we think there's an opportunity. But you can see viral vector, there isn't many opportunities for us to add in new products. However, we are very strong in the places we currently are. We have existing products in the first and second step. We believe we can repurpose some products into the third step, and we have a concept for some new QC tools to help support the third step. This is a market we want to stay in, clearly. This is a successful market for us, and it is going to continue to grow. So we have to make sure that we protect the business we have and stay ahead of our competition. So we need to drive and reinforce the SAN sales whilst looking at other opportunities to drive value in this workflow. There are some adjacent modalities around viral vector that we need to investigate, so we can look to place SAN into some associated, closely related markets, and again, to increase our footprint. So the different strategic initiatives, one, we need to accelerate SAN market penetration today. We have a great product, it's technically strong, and as Michael said, the process works by getting the product in, getting baked into a platform. It's very hard to remove you once that's happened. So there is a race to get into these platforms early. The second one is to identify other potential spaces in this workflow, and we have some candidate areas that we're working on. The third initiative is to make sure we maintain this business. We are already working on the next version of SAN. We need to have a product that is technically superior, adds more customer value, that allows us to protect this market share and take more. And the final one, as I touched on, is to look at potentially other areas around viral vector in this DNA vector modality that allows us to spread the footprint of SAN a little bit wider. And finally, we have RNA therapeutics. This is a great workflow from an enzyme manufacturer's perspective. There's many areas in here where we get to add product or potentially can add product. All of these blue areas, we actually either have product in development or close to being available. Areas where we have a green tick, we already have the product. We're simply doing the final application work to place them in this space. The quality control area, we have a novel enzyme, so new to market, that we'll launch at the end of this year and the beginning of next, which is a great place to be. Not just an existing concept, but a brand new product. So this leads to a very simple strategy here. We need to build and launch a range of enzymes, and we'll do that by repurposing current enzymes, and we are lucky we have many enzymes in our current portfolio that can directly translate to the RNA market. The other benefit is the RNA market isn't hugely different from a customer perspective to the other advanced therapy market we're in, which is viral vector, which means we are familiar with the buying process here. We're familiar with how to commercially enter this space. We need to build a brand in this space, and we need to take market share quickly. However, so the 3 ways we'll do this. 1, we have a novel enzyme. It makes it very easy from a marketing perspective to tell a story. It's an exciting time to be able to go out to market and say, we have something new that solves a problem. We can solve this problem for you. Alongside this, we're going to build out a range of enzymes to support this. So when sales go to a customer, it's not 1 product, it's 4. Or 5, or 3, depending on how the pipeline goes. But the aim is to have a portfolio of products that allows us to address this. To drive revenue faster and to take advantage of this quickly moving market, we're also looking to build strong OEM partnerships. With viral vector, we go mainly to market direct, and that works very well for us. And we're using distribution to amplify that. In the RNA market, initially, we'll also go direct, but we will look to work with OEM suppliers with some of our unique or highly impactful enzymes to get revenue faster, to get embedded quicker, to understand our customers and the market faster. So, hopefully what I've been able to show you there is 3 different strategies or 3 different approaches to the market, which will help us to increase our customer base. We're entering 2 new marketplaces. We have an active plan ongoing today to add new products per workflow, and the new markets we enter to add multiple products per workflow. And also how we look to strengthen our current position in viral vector and PCR. And this will lead to increased growth opportunities, increased market diversity, and for us, an increased market resilience. Thank you very much. Okay.
Right. Thanks for a great presentation. Yeah, in the last, I guess, year, you've seen an acceleration in demand from GMP enzymes, which I believe is partly due to CDMO starting to implement SAN into protocols. But more broadly, is it possible to characterize like a typical customer for a GMP product versus a non-GMP product, and how that affects, margins as well as, visibility from your point of view from these customers?
I mean, GMP is tied to a customer's life cycle. What we've found, that's a very detailed question. I don't have all of that information to hand. What I can tell you is having GMP is critical. I think we've gone past the moment where you can enter a marketplace in the viral vector space without a GMP product, because people are looking at the R&D element and going, this is great, but I want to be in manufacturing in a year and a half. Where's your GMP product? So the impact on margins, honestly, I don't have that information to hand. As Michael says, from a margin perspective, our business works very well. It's the increased scale you get at GMP, which is important. This is very hard to map out, because if you have a therapy that is an ocular therapy, the amount that needs to be produced is very small. But if you have and therefore the production isn't huge. If you have an intramuscular treatment, that's often a very big dose, so it's a much bigger run. Maybe we can talk afterwards, and I can delve into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a point. A lot of the GMP sales that we've seen so far have been really customers that are validating the GMP version versus the non-GMP version. So there's still a lot of potential there. We're just getting started with the GMP sales. So.
The journey we would hope for is customers who are using the non-GMP version, if they are successful and move to manufacture, they should take on GMP. And of course, that's where we see an expansion in their usage.
Okay, thank you. And then you also focus or highlight that your focus in 2026 will be to broaden the application areas of existing portfolios. So maybe if you can, I guess, what I want to come to is like how much of growth will come from that part of your operations versus launching new products and trying to grow on that side, so to say.
So within the RNA space, we have a modest number associated this year and next year because, of course, this is an area where we're starting with R&D customers. As time goes on, we've modeled it, and again, this is maybe something we can show you separately, where we can see RNA becoming actually a very significant portion of our business. If you look at metagenomics, it's really hard for us to gauge at this moment. When we did our initial maths on it, we were looking at lung samples, and we used it for ICU patients. However, what we've seen is the market is growing faster than our calculations, in the sense that we've seen it spread to different sample types very quickly. The people we're working with are telling us they're doubling their samples every 6 months that they're managing. So we had calculations for metagenomics. I feel they're probably not representative. It's probably larger than we think it is. But it is still important to say this is a brand new technology, so it's going through some kind of adoption phase. And the UK has been very, very strong with this adoption of metagenomics in a clinical setting. But they are a little bit of an outlier in this sense. I think it will take longer for this to become established as routine in different places. How long, we don't know exactly. How long this adoption, this initial curve of early adopters or entrepreneurs into early adopters will take before we hit the early majority. We can definitely see the opportunity there. Actually quantifying it today is quite difficult because it's expanding.
Hi, Philip Wiberg from Pareto. So, got a couple of questions on perhaps more how you're using or targeting to use the enzymes within PCR and NGS specifically. So perhaps starting with PCR. So it's used for everything, as you know, and mostly no complex enzymes, a lot of polymerases or perhaps reverse transcriptases if you're working with RNA. I guess those are the most expensive ones in the workflow. Mm-hmm. And you talked about this $10 billion mark, and I suppose most of that is just these generic polymerases, etc.
It is, yeah.
So I suppose you have called UNG, which I suppose is a large part of the current PCR.
It definitely is, yes.
But so I suppose when you're targeting that specific market, which kind of niches are you mainly targeting? Is it mainly called UNG just for these types of workflows, or are you also targeting to go up against giants within polymerases, for instance?
Honestly, we are not best placed to go against a polymerase giant. We have some polymerases in our portfolio. They are not our flagship products, whereas COD UNG is technically a very, very strong product. As you saw, the core drivers often in PCR are now about reduction of cost. So if you go to an existing platform provider, if you go to a big diagnostics company, they'll have 5 or 6 platforms built. And the joy of PCR is often you can just change the primers, and that will allow you to have a different diagnostic test. And you have maybe 5 or 6 platforms to pick from. They're not looking to change them unless you can deliver a significant technical benefit or a significant financial benefit. And at this moment in the portfolio and our pipeline, we don't see the things that are going to achieve that. Because it's a conservative, mature market, entering it and making big changes will be a lot of effort, expensive, and we don't see the products today that allow us to be competitive in that space. Whereas COD UNG is well positioned, we have a nice market, and we see a future for that product. But again, it's a price-pressured marketplace, which happens when things have become more mature and become a little bit more commoditized. We actually see more opportunities in these faster-growing emerging markets where they're looking for solutions. And then hopefully we get to become the company that's entrenched and no one changes later. Does that answer the question?
Well, I guess to some degree, but so like which types of niches are you targeting specifically when you want to grow within PCR? If you get...
I mean, with PCR currently, I think we're looking to defend our business, and we're looking for some easier places to grow where, as a business, our capabilities and the product mix we have is better positioned. And next generation sequencing is a place we have a much better footprint. Our polymerase portfolio is robust, but it's also not going to be something that allows us to take significant share because we won't be driving prices down with it. We don't want to be the company that just reduces cost. We want to be adding technical benefits. And as of today, that's not something in the portfolio. It may be if that comes up through the process and through our innovation cycles, then it may change. And of course, all strategies flex and evolve as new opportunities come up. But as of today, it's more about making sure that we maintain the footprint we currently have in PCR.
And I totally agree. The only addition I would make to that is the sales team are being very deliberate about the kind of PCR customers that they're visiting and the kind of conversations they're having. So there is a subset of PCR customers who are more risk averse. You know, they value spending a little bit more on making sure that their test, their diagnostic test, whatever it might be, is secured with COD UNG. And these customers are still popping up, especially since COVID, you know, where the risk of false positives is talked about more. As Steve mentioned, though, what we're not doing is going to the mass PCR market. We're not set up to have many thousands of small academic customers doing a little bit of PCR.
Okay, good, thanks. And so the second part is then on the NGS as well. So obviously PCR is used within NGS workflows at all times. So is that mainly how you see your enzymes positioned in?
PCR is not always used in NGS.
Well, mostly during library prep at least.
So the library amplifications, no, as of today, the main area we see, if you ask me today, where is our opportunity that we can act on immediately, it's actually in the host DNA clearance step way before this. And the importance of this will be explained in some of the presentations later.
Yeah, okay.
But it's that nuclease step. Again, the library prep step is an area we're targeting, and we've got some interesting enzymes in there, maybe more in the RNA sequencing space than the DNA sequencing space. However, we see opportunity there. But today, really looking closely at the host DNA clearance step as the cornerstone that we then build from. But we do have some targets in here in the amplification area, which we're looking at, maybe some more salt-tolerant enzymes, which are going to allow you to work with more complex or salty starting materials to improve that workflow in a clinical setting.
Okay, yeah, good. That really answers my question. So it seems to be mainly within the metagenomic space, so not targeting, you know, the big part of that market, I guess, is the reagents and consumables for actual sequencing and Illumina is the giant within that. So it's just a small part of that market.
Oh, of course. I mean, we are not in a position right now to do the entire workflow. And full library prep is something that we are not ready to take on, and that isn't in scope currently. We're looking at the areas where we know that as a business we add value and could be competitive, and where we have enzymes that are actually adding or answering a problem. So we will look, as we build that footprint, to add some enzymes around it, which may not be completely unique to increase our offering. But the starting point is the nucleases. We are very good at nucleases. It's a great place for us to start in any market. And again, in next-generation sequencing, we're there. But we do know there are amplification steps where potentially some of our LAMP enzymes, the BSD Plus, could potentially be used. But these are still proof of concepts that we're working through.
Okay, thanks a lot.
No worries.
Perfect, thanks so much. Simon Larsson with Danske Bank. Maybe following up a bit on Philip's question here on sort of the NGS part. Would it sort of make sense for you to maybe target inclusion in, let's say, you know, prep kits from the likes of Illumina, Oxford, Nanopore, etc., or are you rather focusing maybe now on, let's call it reference labs, working with the academic community instead, or how are you going about with the nucleases, perhaps?
It's actually a very interesting question, and I think the answer is absolutely. I mean, our core business in the molecular tool space is not serving individuals. We would rather serve a lab. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't make a decision to slightly change our route to market and maybe look to send it to support end users more. I think it's more about where we are in the adoption curve. If you're a kits manufacturer, you're not going to make a kit today, potentially for metagenomics, until that's an embedded and it's a more routine application, or some point on that journey. And I think we're quite early in this process right now. If you're a next generation sequencing platform today, if you're an Illumina, they have lots of kits. But metagenomics is actually quite small. It may be growing rapidly, but it's still quite small for them relative to everything else they're doing. Our hope is you increase the noise in the market, we increase our service to reference labs and smaller customers. That then creates a market demand for solutions. Now, we are looking at potentially solutions in this space as well, but my expectation is that the big kits manufacturers say, actually, we need to work this. We need to be working with a partner, and then we're very well placed to take that business. But I think it's more about the market development. As of today, this is a really interesting market for us. We feel the impact because we're a relatively small company, so we can feel it, and we're very well placed in this workflow. If you were a QIAGEN, this is still relatively small for them. In a number of years, as this accelerates, this will pop up on everyone's radar, and then the investment from their perspective will be worthwhile. So we are currently working with the idea of serving customers directly. Of course, if a kits manufacturer came and talked to us tomorrow, we will absolutely have a conversation with them. And it is part of this, there's a more detailed metagenomic strategy where we are specifically looking at how we drive this through lab test providers. However, there is also, we're keeping an eye out for the potential kits manufacturers. But watch this space, because there's a number of different ways we can approach this, and it's a very, very fast-moving market. Okay, I'm being told I'm at time, so any other questions we can do within the break. Thank you.